I wasn't supposed to be home that night. My flight home had been scheduled for the next morning, and I'd even booked a hotel for the night near the airport. But the meeting was canceled at the last second, one of those high-level shakeups where no one's sure if it's a power play or a meltdown. Whatever it was, I found myself with an unexpected evening to myself. The thought of seeing Jade was actually the first thing that crossed my mind. I texted her that I'd be staying overnight like planned. I wanted the surprise to feel like the old days, back when we used to laugh over pizza and fall asleep to old sitcoms with the dog between us. That kind of easy comfort had been missing lately. As I turned into our neighborhood, everything looked exactly the same. The neighbor's porch light buzzing, kids' bikes tipped over in driveways, the sky turning a soft blue-gray with the evening. Normal, familiar, until it wasn't. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed something strange right away. A coat hanging off the porch railing. Not mine. Not Jade's either. At least not any jacket I'd seen before. This one was sleek, expensive-looking, with a label from a boutique in town we joked about once. Jade had said, "We'd need to win the lottery to shop there." So why was one of their coats on our porch? It wasn't cold enough for it, either. Just draped there like someone had peeled it off in a hurry. IK** led the engine and sat there for a moment, just watching the house. No lights on downstairs. The porch light wasn't even flipped. That alone was weird. Jade's a stickler for lights. She can't stand a dark entryway. "It makes the house feel unloved," she once told me. That's when the front door opened. I swear I stopped breathing. Jade stepped out slowly, like she was sneaking off stage. She had on a dress I didn't recognize. Black, low-cut, tight at the waist. Not the kind of thing she wore for date night. Not for me, anyway. Her makeup was heavier than usual, and her hair was done in that half-curled style she used to only bother with for weddings. And then came the kicker, the perfume. It wasn't the warm vanilla scent she always wore. This was sharp, floral, and expensive-smelling. The kind of scent that turns heads in elevators. It clung to the air around her like a new identity. I didn't say a word. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy checking her phone. Then she walked right past the car, straight toward the curb where another car waited. A black SUV. Windows tinted. I saw a man in the driver's seat, but not clearly enough to make out his face. Tall, maybe. Broad shoulders. Confident posture. She got in. No hesitation. No glance back. I didn't move, just sat there like some ghost in the driver's seat, trying to piece together what I'd just seen. As the SUV pulled away, something caught my eye through the rear window. Her shoes. Her flats. The ones she wears almost every day. They were on the back seat like she'd tossed them aside. Why bring another pair? Why leave the old ones? It was like she'd stepped out of her real life and into another one, and left her old self behind in the process. I didn't follow. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me didn't want to confirm what I was starting to suspect. Maybe because I needed to think, or because some part of me hoped I was wrong. I waited. Hours passed. I sat in the living room, lights off, just the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking of the hallway clock to keep me company. I kept expecting headlights to flood the window or her key to turn in the lock. But the longer I waited, the more surreal it all felt. Like I was watching my life happen from the outside. It was nearly midnight when the door finally opened. I stood behind the wall, just out of view. I heard the click of her heels, the creak of the floorboards. Then I saw her. She looked wrecked. Her makeup was smudged, eyes red and glassy. Her hair was still mostly intact, but the effort she'd put into it was undone by the storm on her face. She looked like someone who'd just lost a fight, or ended a long cry she didn't want anyone to know about. She froze when she saw me. "Oh," she whispered, startled. "You're home." "Meeting got canceled," I said flatly. She didn't respond, just nodded and kicked off her heels, leaving them by the door without a word. She walked past me toward the stairs. I could feel the distance in her footsteps, like she was moving away from me in more than just space. "I tried to call," she mumbled. "No, you didn't." She didn't argue, didn't even look back. In the bedroom, she started rambling softly, almost to herself. Something about a bad night, plans falling apart, how everything had gone sideways. Her voice was thick, like she was pushing words through water. She said it was a disaster, that it was a mistake, that she didn't want to talk about it. I didn't push. I didn't ask. I just watched her climb into bed, turn away, and curl into herself like a stranger in our sheets. I stared at the ceiling for a long time that night, my mind spinning. I didn't have proof of anything, not yet, but something had broken, and I wasn't sure it could be fixed. They say hindsight is 20/20, but no one tells you how gutting that clarity can be. In the days that followed Jade's tearful return, I kept circling back to everything that had changed. The shifts that once seemed harmless, now appearing like puzzle pieces I'd ignored on purpose. I didn't want to see the picture they were forming, but now that it had started to take shape, I couldn't look away. Started small, months ago. She stopped wearing her wedding ring at home. Said it was uncomfortable, especially when she cooked or cleaned. Fair enough, but then it was off when we went out too. Then when we visited her sister. Then when we had dinner with friends. I remember noticing the bare spot on her finger and asking about it. She'd smiled, reached for my hand, and said, "You know I don't need jewelry to show I'm yours." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Then there was the phone. Jade used to leave it lying around, screen up on the coffee table or kitchen counter while she made dinner. We both did. There were no secrets back then. But at some point, she started keeping it on her at all times, even while brushing her teeth. The ringer went silent. The lock screen changed. The password did too. When I asked her about it once, she laughed it off, saying she'd read an article about digital privacy and wanted to clean up her digital footprint. I nodded like it made sense. One night, I walked into the bathroom while she was getting ready for bed. I heard her whispering, a voice, low and soft, coming from behind the door. When I stepped in, she was standing there, phone down, a towel around her hair, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. She blinked. "No one, just scrolling through a podcast." A podcast that required hushed tones and a guilty expression? But I didn't argue. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband, the one who polices his wife's time and friendships. That wasn't me. Or at least I told myself it wasn't. I remembered other things too. Things I'd let slide at the time. A sudden interest in fitness. She joined a gym across town, despite there being one just 5 minutes from our house. Started wearing makeup to work every day, even though her office dress code was business casual and her job wasn't customer-facing. The dresses in her closet changed too. Bolder styles, shorter hems, some with tags still on, hidden in the back. Once, I saw a receipt in the trash from a high-end department store. Makeup and perfume totaling more than we usually budgeted for a month. I asked about it casually. She shrugged. "Treating myself," she said. "We've been working hard. Don't I deserve a little something?" "Of course," I'd said. "Of course you do." She started coming home later too. At first, it was quarterly deadlines or team dinners. Then it was networking events or drinks with the girls. Once, I offered to pick her up from one. She said she was taking an Uber, then texted an hour later that she was staying with a coworker because she'd had too much wine. I asked which coworker. She dodged the question. We used to share everything, playlists, inside jokes, bad TV marathons. But now, even the little things were off. I'd show her something from work, a new design I was proud of, and she'd give me a distracted smile without really seeing it. She used to ask about my projects, used to light up when I talked about launching new campaigns. But now, her eyes glazed over, and she'd pivot the conversation to her job, or some drama with a coworker I'd never heard of before. "Do you know a guy named Elliot from your office?" I asked once, after hearing his name for the third time that week. She paused for half a beat too long. "Yeah, he's new. Kind of annoying. Talks too much." "Why?" "Just noticed you've mentioned him a lot." She rolled her eyes. "I mention a lot of people. Don't be weird." I wasn't being weird. I was just paying attention, finally. There was one night, a few weeks after the strange evening, when she came home late again. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard the garage door open. I didn't get up. I just listened. She tiptoed in like a teenager past curfew. I heard her in the bathroom, running water, maybe scrubbing off perfume. She didn't know I was awake. She didn't say goodnight. I waited, heart thudding, for her to slide into bed next to me. When she did, she kept her back turned. Her breathing stayed too even, too controlled, like someone pretending to sleep. I laid there staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds. 5, 10, 20 minutes. The space between us in that bed felt like a canyon. I started doing something I wasn't proud of. I started writing things down. Every excuse. Every late night. Every strange outfit. I wasn't planning on confronting her, not yet. I just needed to see the whole thing in black and white. A record of all the times I'd swallowed my gut instinct and let the doubt pass. A list to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. The pattern wasn't random. It was deliberate. And it was growing. Still, there were moments when she tried or pretended to. She'd curl up next to me on the couch on weekends and ask if I wanted to watch something together. She'd kiss me on the cheek, call me babe, ask if I wanted anything from the grocery store. And for a second, I think maybe I was imagining it all. But then she'd get a text. Her phone would light up. She'd turn it face down and say she needed to run a quick errand. Always when the mood was just starting to feel normal again. Always when I started to feel like maybe we were okay. One Sunday, I was cleaning the garage when I noticed a strand of hair on the passenger seat of her car. Blonde. Long wavy. Jade's hair was dark and pin straight. I stared at it for a long time, that single strand like a crack in a windshield threatening to spider out and shatter the whole thing. I didn't say anything. I just logged it in the notebook. I felt like I was unraveling. Like I was being erased in slow motion. And Jade, the woman I'd built my life around, was disappearing right in front of me, slipping into someone else's world. The worst part? She didn't even seem to notice. I never went looking for proof. Not really. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth was, by then, I needed it. My mind was already a house on fire, and the smoke was choking out any last flicker of denial. I didn't want to be wrong anymore. I wanted to know. Cold, undeniable truth. No more guessing. No more notebook entries. Just the facts. And once I had those, I'd figure out what to do. It happened on a Saturday. Jade had gone to one of her planning retreats, a quarterly weekend trip with her marketing team that involved wine tastings, rented Airbnbs, and too many inside jokes I wasn't included in. She left early with barely a goodbye kiss, just a quick, don't forget to water the plants, and the sound of her heels clicking out the door. By noon, I found myself in the garage, digging through the filing cabinet in the home office. I was looking for an old receipt, something stupid for the tax guy. Jade always kept our documents meticulously sorted, which is why it struck me as odd when I found a drawer labeled Tax 2022 that felt heavier than it should. There was a flash drive tucked in the back. A plain, silver thing. No label. No reason for it to be there, at least not in the taxes. I almost tossed it aside. But something about it pulled at me. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. I plugged it into my laptop at the kitchen counter, the way you do when you're bored or curious or just hoping for a distraction. What opened was a list of video files. Dozens of them. All with timestamps from the past 9 months. No names. Just numbers 021503280410 on and on. It took me a second to remember the security system in the garage studio. I'd installed it myself 3 years ago when I was converting the space into a side office. A single camera, an old model I'd forgotten even worked, mounted high in the corner, set to record on motion detection. I never took it down. Never checked the footage. We hadn't used the space much lately. At least I hadn't. The first file opened on a grainy frame of the garage door opening. Jade walked in. She wasn't alone. It was the same man. The one from the car that night. Tall. Light stubble. Confident smile. The kind of guy who didn't knock. He moved like he belonged there. They didn't see the camera. That much was clear. At first, they were just talking. Jade laughed, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Free. Flirty. Then they sat at the small table in the corner, the one I used for blueprints and sketches. There was takeout. A bottle of wine. She reached for his hand. He leaned in. The kiss was slow. Familiar. Practiced. I watched in silence, the sound of my own breathing louder than the video. In another clip, she took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table before she reached for him again. Like she was shedding a costume. Each file was another slice of the life she lived when I wasn't around. Some were short, a conversation, a hug, a goodbye. Others showed full dinners, laughter, even her leaning against him while they watched something on a tablet, like it was their home. One recording hit harder than the rest. They were sitting in the garage studio with candles lit, my candles, the ones I used when I worked late and didn't want the overhead lights. Jade was curled into him, barefoot, sipping wine. He said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed before replying, "We'll figure it out. It's just money. Cody's not stupid, but he's distracted. It'll be okay." He nodded, kissed her forehead. "I just want this to be real." "It already is," she said, and laid her head on his chest. I paused the video. The silence in the kitchen pressed down on me like a weight. I sat there for a long time, not moving, just staring at the paused screen, her face frozen in a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in nearly a year. My stomach turned. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. It was a second life. Planned. Maintained. Hidden in plain sight. Every lie she told me, every distance she put between us, it had been calculated. Smoothed over with just enough affection to keep me questioning myself instead of her. She didn't just cheat. She rehearsed it. Repeated it. Recorded it, even if by accident. She used my space. My tools. My absence. And she wasn't even sorry. Not once did she look hesitant or conflicted in those videos. She wasn't wrestling with guilt. She was comfortable. Happy. At peace. With him. I closed the files. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there and stared at my reflection in the black screen of the laptop. It's strange how quiet your mind becomes when the last thread snaps. Like all the noise, the doubt, the second-guessing, the internal back and forth just drains away. I felt clean. Not healed. Not whole. But empty in the way you feel when you finally accept that something's truly, completely over. I backed up the drive. 3 times. 1 copy to a private cloud. Another to my external hard drive. A third burned onto a CD and hidden in a lockbox I kept under the guest room floorboard. Redundant, maybe? But I didn't trust what would happen if Jade realized I knew. Because now I understood something critical. This wasn't just betrayal. This was performance. She wasn't going to come clean. She was going to protect herself. And I needed to be ready. I didn't confront her. Not that day. Not the next. Not even after she came home Sunday night with a forced yawn and a suitcase that smelled like hotel linens and rose perfume. She gave me the usual routine, exhausted from meetings, too many people talking over each other, you know how those things are. I nodded. Asked if she wanted tea. She said yes. I smiled and stirred in honey. She had no idea. I wasn't looking for revenge. That's not who I am. But I did want control, something solid to hold onto. I'd spent too long wondering if I was imagining things, too long gaslighting myself while she orchestrated another life. Now that I had proof, I didn't want confrontation. I wanted leverage. So I got to work. First, I backed up everything again. Every file, video, photo, and note I had all organized, timestamped, and categorized. I stored the folders in separate cloud drives with encrypted access. My lawyer, an old friend I hadn't spoken to since college, was the first person I called. "Is this about work or?" he asked gently after hearing my voice. "It's personal," I replied. "And I need to play it smart." Over lunch in a quiet part of town, I explained everything, not just the videos, but the changes in Jade, the altered passwords, the strange nights. He listened closely, never interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and sighed. "You've got enough for a clean separation," he said. "Possibly more. Depends on what she asks for. When she realizes you're not going to roll over." That's when we laid out the plan. Step 1, financial insulation. I shifted our joint checking account into a protected trust under my name. Nothing sneaky, just legal restructuring. Jade still had access to her own funds, the ones she contributed through her job, but our shared expenses now funneled through an account she couldn't touch without authorization. I also quietly removed her as a cosigner on our home equity line and paused all auto withdrawals connected to my credit profile. Just precautionary, my lawyer said. Just smart. Next came the digital cleanup. We'd long shared access to a central cloud storage for bills, photos, backups. I combed through every document, asterisk-ting anything that seemed relevant, shared purchases, vacation dates that matched suspicious recordings, receipts that didn't line up. I then changed the master password and locked her out. Our smart home system, thermostats, lights, cameras, even the garage access had always been synced to both our phones. I updated the admin profile, removed her device, and installed a new layer of tracking software on the back end. Not to spy, just to ensure if she got clever, I wouldn't be left in the dark. Then came her car. She drove a hybrid we co-owned. I'd been making the payments, handling the maintenance. So one quiet afternoon, while she was at work, I drove it to a local shop and had a discreet GPS tracker installed. Paid in cash. Registered it under a burner email. I didn't check it often. I didn't need to. I just wanted the truth on my terms. The funny part? Through all this I became calm. Not cold, just clear. Like I'd been stuck in fog for months and now the sky was open again. Jade noticed it too. "You've been so quiet lately," she said one evening, while folding laundry beside me on the bed. "Just tired," I said with a smile. "Work stuff." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "You sure you're okay?" I looked her in the eye and nodded. "Never been better." She smiled, content. And I marked it down. Another lie wrapped in routine. That same week, I received an envelope at my office. Divorce paperwork. Jade filed first. It wasn't a complete surprise, not really. But the timing struck me. She must have sensed something had shifted. Or maybe her hand had been forced. Either way, the packet was neat, professional, and wildly aggressive. She was demanding alimony. Half of all shared assets. Full rights to her car. Partial claim on the house. Citing contributions to household stability. She'd even included a vague clause about future earnings. Projected growth from Cody's business ventures. I read it twice, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. By the time she filed, my lawyer and I were already ahead of her. We had files, timestamps, digital footprints, a timeline that painted the real picture. My reply was just as professional but surgical. Her request for alimony was denied outright, citing misconduct. My filings included a statement on marital fraud with documentation. Every account she tried to lay claim to had already been converted or protected. I even had notarized proof of her verbal withdrawal from several investment discussions we'd had over the past 2 years. Emails where she explicitly said she wasn't interested in being tied to any long-term finance. I sent my response the next day. But I wasn't done. Jade's father ran a construction firm, well known in the region with ties to several county contracts. Over the years, he'd brought her into a few advisory boards for tax benefits, though she never really worked for the company. Still, her name was attached to certain permits and filings. During my document cleanup, I found something curious. An environmental violation report, minor, dismissed. But it was tied to one of her father's development sites. And Jade had signed off on the zoning recommendation, backdated. I forwarded it to a contact in the county's compliance office, anonymously. I also found donations from the firm to a local environmental charity, a charity I'd partnered with on several business projects. Jade's name showed up again, listed as a liaison for community outreach, with dates that overlapped suspiciously with our joint expenses. I sent those too. By the end of the month, 3 audits were underway. Quiet ones. Just routine review procedures. But the firm's attorney knew better. I could tell by the tone in the voicemail Jade left me one night. Clipped, rehearsed, cautious. "I think we should talk," she said. "I didn't realize how complicated things had become. Maybe we can find a way through this that doesn't hurt either of us more than it has to." I never called her back. Because by now, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was pulling the threads of every lie she'd wrapped herself in, and I wanted to see how far the unraveling would go. I expected retaliation. I didn't expect how dirty it would get. The day after my legal response landed in her inbox, I saw the shift begin. Not in court filings or attorney emails, but in how she looked at me when we crossed paths in the house. Her expressions had always been layered. Smiles that didn't reach her eyes, pauses long enough to hide subtext, but now they were outright performative, like she was practicing a version of herself for someone else's benefit. And soon I found out exactly who that was. The first escalation came through a countersuit, filed swiftly, sloppily, and saturated with manufactured claims. Jade accused me of emotional neglect, manipulation, and creating an uninhabitable psychological environment. Her words, not mine. She painted herself as a wife under siege, trapped in a marriage where she was isolated and invalidated, where her well-being had been systematically undermined by subtle control mechanisms. I read the entire packet twice, sitting in the conference room of my attorney's office, my coffee going cold beside me. It was surreal, reading those words, as if someone had taken our marriage and run it through a funhouse mirror. There were references to things I never said, moments that never happened, and interpretations so warped I started wondering if she believed them herself. "She's trying to turn the narrative," my lawyer said, flipping through the folder. "She knows she's cornered. This is a power move to create doubt." The language wasn't just emotionally charged, it was tactical. Phrases like long-term psychological fatigue and coercive silence were designed to raise eyebrows in court, to plant seeds in the mind of a judge, to muddy the waters just enough to stall the momentum I'd built. Then came the online post. She published it on a private Facebook group that catered to women's advocacy, one we both used to donate to. The post was long, framed as a personal testimony, and conveniently vague. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our story could see the connections. She wrote about being erased in her own marriage, about the pain of being dismissed, about the slow erosion of confidence in a home that should have been safe. She wrote about how she made a mistake, a deeply human one, and how that mistake was born from loneliness and fear, not betrayal. The comments flooded in. Most of them were sympathetic, encouraging, supportive. Some were angry, not at her, but at the man they imagined me to be. One person wrote, "I hope you find healing. Men like that rarely understand the damage they cause." At first, I stayed silent. I wasn't about to start a war in the comments section. But the post grew legs, got *Ted shared. Eventually, it reached people we both knew. Mutual friends started to act distant. A few unfollowed me altogether. One even texted me a passive-aggressive quote from some therapy account: "When people show you who they are, believe them." I didn't respond. Not until the leaks started. Someone, and I didn't have to guess who, sent an anonymous tip to the local paper alleging that I had manipulated city contracts through my environmental firm. They cited unethical partnerships, claimed I'd used shell donors to leverage permits, and included my name in the subject line alongside the phrase "possible ethics violation." It was noise. Empty. But it was dangerous noise. My firm had built its reputation on transparency and clean practice. Even a hint of scandal could ripple through our operations. Clients asked questions. A few delayed projects pending clarification. My inbox filled with polite concern. Again, I didn't flinch. I forwarded everything to my attorney and my PR rep, who both moved faster than I could blink. We released a statement, posted our own documentation. We were clean, and the attempt was sloppy enough that most people saw through it. But still, the damage was done. And Jade wasn't finished. Behind the scenes, she pushed for a freeze on joint assets, claimed financial manipulation, demanded forensic accounting on our shared investments. She even challenged the prenup we'd signed, a basic agreement that had sat quietly for 8 years collecting dust. Suddenly, she declared it signed under emotional duress. Her father stepped in next. Up until that point, he'd been a background figure, silent, stiff, transactional. But now, with his company under pressure from the environmental complaints I'd submitted, he surfaced in the form of a new legal firm, a larger one, slicker, louder. They filed motions with mitigating language, hinting at defamation and reputational harm. They were trying to flip the script, to turn me from victim to villain. But they made one miscalculation. They underestimated who else Jade had lied to. Her so-called colleagues, the ones she name-dropped so often in our fights, weren't all loyal. One of them, a soft-spoken woman named Rachel, reached out to me through a burner email. She offered to talk. Said she had receipts. In exchange for immunity in the audits now circling her department, she was willing to testify. And what she revealed made everything before it feel like a warm-up act. According to Rachel, Jade had been funneling grant funds from the charity she co-advised into consultant payments for the man from the videos. The one I now knew was named Marcus. He wasn't a consultant. He didn't even have credentials in environmental sciences. He was listed under 3 different aliases across payment files, all signed off by Jade. Rachel sent spreadsheets, memos, *TS. Even a draft letter Jade had written to the charity board, arguing for a more flexible, impact-driven funding model that allowed non-traditional partners to support growth. I handed everything to my lawyer. Then I forwarded it to the same environmental oversight agency that had started poking around her father's business. By the end of the week, a formal criminal investigation was opened. The moment she learned about it, Jade tried to contact me. Called twice. Left one voicemail, a shaky mess of words. "Cody, I didn't know it had gone that far. I thought we were still, can we talk? Please." I didn't reply. the man she sacrificed our marriage for? He vanished. Quit his job. Deleted social media. Rumor had it he left the state entirely. Her online defenders began to go silent too. One by one, her carefully crafted narrative began to unravel. And all I had to do was let it. 3 months passed. Most of the wreckage had settled by then, the legal motions, the investigation, the social fallout. Jade had gone silent. No more emails. No more public posts. Just whispers about the charity being frozen, her father's company bleeding contracts, and Marcus officially unreachable. I had every right to walk away and never look back. But I wanted closure. On my terms. So I reached out and asked to meet. We chose a cafe downtown, the same one where I'd proposed to her a decade earlier. There was something poetic about it, ending where we began. I booked the back room under my name, showed up early, and waited. She walked in late. I almost didn't recognize her. Jade looked hollow. Her makeup was minimal, her hair tied back like she hadn't bothered. She wore a blazer too big for her shoulders and sat across from me like someone preparing for sentencing. She tried to speak, but I stopped her. "Don't," I said gently. "Let me talk." From my bag, I pulled a folder. Inside were printed statements, bank records, *TS emails, affidavits, a map of every lie she tried to protect. Her eyes didn't move. She just stared at the stack, not even pretending to read. Then I handed her the last page, the notice of formal charges filed against the nonprofit board. "They're naming you," I said. "But you already knew that." For a second, she looked like she might defend herself. Her mouth opened. But the words didn't come. Instead, her shoulders slumped and her gaze dropped. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. "It always goes this far," I said. When I left the cafe, I didn't look back. She didn't follow. 2 years later, my world looked nothing like the life I'd lived before. My firm had grown, expanding across 4 states, specializing in land reclamation and transparency-based contracting. We'd earned features in sustainability journals, and I'd been asked to speak at conferences, the same guy who once questioned whether he was even enough for his own wife. I lived quietly. No excess. No noise. My home was smaller but full of peace. I spent weekends hiking, volunteering, reading books I never had time for before. People I trusted stayed close. The rest faded into memory. Jade? Last I heard, she'd taken a logistics job in another city, mid-tier management at a firm with no public ties to her past. Someone told me she was renting a studio apartment near the industrial district. The woman who once curated an aesthetic for every room in our house now lived behind a keypad entry with a parking lot view. One night, she sent me a message. Just a few words, "I still think about you. I hope you're okay." I read it twice, then deleted it. Because I was okay. Better than okay. I had rebuilt what she tried to tear down, not out of vengeance, but necessity. She once thought breaking me would leave me hollow. Instead, it made me whole.